The bridal sedan swayed gently, its red silk curtains brushing against my trembling hands. I, Emily Carter, sat within, my heart pounding with dreams of a new life as Jason Miller's bride. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the distant clamor of gongs, heralding my arrival at the Miller household. But as the sedan touched the ground, a piercing cry shattered the festive hum. Jason's dead. At that moment, my world collapsed. The joy of my wedding day turned to ash, and I was no longer a bride but a criminal, accused of causing his death with some unseen curse. The villagers' whispers stung like thorns. She's bad luck, they hissed. First her parents, now her groom. Jason's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, stormed toward me, their faces twisted with grief and rage. "You killed our son!" Mrs. Miller screamed, her fists raining down on me. I crumpled under the blows, too stunned to resist, my white dress stained with dirt and tears. My fate had been sealed when I woke, bruised and shivering in their woodshed. I was the cursed woman who brought death to the Millers, condemned to atone for a crime I didn't commit. Desperate to prove my worth, I handed over my savings, every coin I'd scraped together since my parents' deaths when I was a child. It was meant to be my dowry, a symbol of my commitment to Jason, but the Millers took it without a word of thanks. In his place, I cared for my sick in-laws, fetching water, cooking meals, and scrubbing floors until my hands bled. I worked tirelessly to support Jason's younger sister, Amy, funding her education and cheering her ambitions to rise in the village's small society. Each act of sacrifice was a plea for acceptance, a hope that the Millers might one day see me as family. But their cold glances and sharp words never softened. Years passed, and my body began to betray me. Exhaustion clung to my bones, and a persistent cough worsened each season. When the village doctor delivered the diagnosis, late-stage cancer, I felt no surprise, only a hollow resignation. I'd given everything to the Millers. In return, they'd drained me dry. As I lay in my narrow cot, my strength fading, a neighbor's gossip reached my ears. Jason was alive. The words pierced me like a blade. Alive? How could that be? Driven by a surge of desperate hope, I dragged myself to the town clinic, my vision blurring with pain. There, through a haze of fever, I saw Jason, hale and hearty, his arm around Lisa Tran, his first love. She was radiant, her hand resting on her swollen belly as they laughed with a nurse about their upcoming child. My heart shattered. I stumbled forward, my voice a ragged whisper. "Jason, you're alive?" His eyes met mine, cold and unyielding. He pushed me away, his touch like ice. "I didn't want to marry you, Emily," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "So I faked my death. Is that wrong? The money you gave my family, the way you slaved for them, that was your choice. No one forced you." Lisa clung to his arm, her expression mixed with guilt and defiance. I learned later she'd loved Jason since childhood, believing he'd choose her if not for my dowry's lure. She'd urged him to escape the marriage, promising a life together, but her eyes now flickered with doubt as she saw my broken state. I wanted to scream, to demand why she'd let me suffer, but my strength failed. Rage surged through my chest, hot and bitter, and I spat a mouthful of blood onto the clinic floor. Jason shielded Lisa, turning away as if I were nothing. "Stay away from us," he muttered, guiding her out. I collapsed, my vision darkening. The pain of betrayal cut deeper than the cancer eating my body. I'd loved Jason, not passionately, but with a quiet duty to fulfill my parents' dying wish that I marry him. I'd believed in his kindness and promises, only to learn it was all a lie. The Millers had known too. Amy's smirks, Mr. Miller's averted gaze, Mrs. Miller's cruel jabs. They'd used me, bled me dry, and discarded me. As my breath grew shallow, a strange warmth enveloped me like a mother's embrace. A whisper, faint as a breeze, brushed my mind. "You will have another chance." Was it my parents' spirits granting me redemption? I clung to that hope as darkness claimed me, my life slipping away in a pool of regret. The bridal sedan rocked gently, its wooden frame creaking under the weight of my racing heart. I, Emily Carter, sat frozen, my fingers clutching the red silk veil to mark me as Jason Miller's bride. The air hummed with the clamor of gongs and drums, the festive pulse of a village wedding. But my mind was elsewhere, trapped in the echo of a life already lived. My chest tightened as memories flooded back. Jason's cold sneer as he admitted faking his death, the miller's cruel hands beating me into submission, the cancer that devoured my body while I served a family that despised me. Yet here I was, alive, my skin warm and unscarred, the sedan's curtains swaying as if no time had passed. I blinked, disoriented, my breath catching in my throat. The red banners outside, the jasmine scent clinging to my dress. It was my wedding day, the day that had doomed me. I pressed my hands to my face, expecting the hollow cheeks of my dying self, but found only smooth skin. A shiver ran through me. How was this possible? I remembered collapsing in the clinic, Jason's betrayal searing my soul, and that strange warmth, like a mother's embrace, whispering of a second chance. Was it my parents' spirits reaching from beyond to grant me redemption? Or was it a cruel trick, a dream before death? My heart pounded, torn between hope and dread. I leaned forward, peering through the sedan's curtains. The carriers marched in rhythm, their faces flushed with the day's excitement. Beyond them, villagers laughed, their voices bright with anticipation. They didn't know the truth, that Jason had never loved me, that his family had orchestrated a lie to claim my dowry. In my past life, I'd stepped out of this sedan full of hope, only to be branded a cursed widow, beaten unconscious by the miller's fury. The memory stung, sharp as a blade. Could I let it happen again? Doubt gnawed at me. What if I defied them and failed? What if I was still the jinx they claimed, doomed to ruin everyone I loved? My fingers tightened around the veil, its delicate threads a reminder of my parents' dying wish. Marry Jason, they'd whispered, believing he'd give me a family, a home. I'd clung to that wish, even when Jason's indifference chilled me and the Millers treated me like a servant. But their wish had led to my destruction. If they could see me now, would they still want me to suffer? The warmth from my death lingered in my mind, a faint pulse of encouragement. You will have another chance, it had promised. I closed my eyes, imagining my mother's gentle smile and my father's steady hand. They'd want me to be happy, not chained to a lie. A sudden jolt snapped me back. The sedan had paused, the carriers adjusting their grip. Voices drifted through the curtains, the matchmaker's shrill tone cutting above the rest. Almost there, Emily. You'll make a fine bride. Her words twisted in my gut. Fine bride? To a man who'd faked his death to escape me? Rage surged, drowning my doubt. I wouldn't let the Millers win again. I thought of Ryan Carter, the only one who'd seen me as more than a curse in my past life. He'd stayed in the village, turning down city jobs, hoping to free me from the Millers' grasp. His kindness had been a light in my darkness, though I'd pushed him away, fearing my bad luck would taint him. Could I find him now, before it was too late? My hands trembled as I gripped the sedan's frame. The risk was immense. Defying tradition would make me a pariah, the village's scorn sharper than any whip. But the alternative, repeating my past life's misery, was unthinkable. I took a shaky breath, my resolve hardening. If this rebirth was real, I had to seize it. I threw open the sedan curtain, the bright sunlight blinding me momentarily. The carrier stumbled, startled, and the matchmaker's face appeared, her eyes wide with confusion. Emily, what's wrong? She asked, her voice tinged with annoyance. Turn this sedan around, I shouted, my voice stronger than I felt. I won't marry Jason Miller. The words rang out, sharp and final, silencing the crowd. Gasps rippled through the villagers, their faces a mix of shock and disapproval. The matchmaker sputtered. What kind of joke is this? We're nearly at the Miller house. My heart raced, but I met her gaze, unflinching. No joke, I said, my voice steady now. I know the truth about Jason and his family. I'm done being their pawn. The carriers hesitated, glancing at each other. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a fierce whisper. You know I paid for this wedding. Every banner, every coin. Take me to the Carter family on the east side and I'll double your pay. But if you take me to the Millers, you'll get nothing. My words hung in the air, heavy with authority. The matchmaker's jaw tightened, but she saw the truth in my eyes. I wasn't the meek girl they'd expected. Slowly, the carriers nodded, and the sedan shifted away from the Miller house. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, but I ignored them, my mind fixed on Ryan. This was my chance to rewrite my fate, but a flicker of fear lingered as the sedan moved. What if I was wrong? What if I couldn't escape the curse they'd branded me with? I pushed the thought aside, clinging to the warmth that had brought me here. For the first time, I felt alive, ready to fight for the life I deserved. The bridal sedan lurched forward, its wooden frame groaning as the carriers adjusted their path toward the Carter family home. I, Emily Carter, sat rigid, my hands gripping the red silk veil now crumpled in my lap. The festive clamor of gongs and drums had faded, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against my ears. The villagers' murmurs followed like a shadow, their whispers sharp with judgment. She's lost her mind. What kind of bride changes her groom? My heart pounded, each beat a reminder of the gamble I'd taken. I'd defied the Millers, the village, and my parents' dying wish, all to escape a fate that had once destroyed me. But doubt clawed at my resolve. What if Ryan rejected me? What if this rebirth, gifted by that mysterious warmth I felt in death, was a test I was failing? The sedan swayed, and I peered through the curtains. Once alive with wedding cheer, the village streets now felt like a gauntlet. Faces peered from doorways, their eyes narrowing as the sedan veered east, away from the Miller house. I caught snippets of their scorn. Ungrateful girl, Jason was good to her. Good? I stifled a bitter laugh. Jason, who'd faked his death to run to Lisa Tran, had never loved me. His family had seen my dowry as a prize, not me as a daughter. In my past life, I'd believed their lies, letting them beat me into submission after his death. But this time, I'd seen the truth. Thanks to that fleeting whisper in my dying moment. Perhaps my parents' spirits urging me to reclaim my life. The matchmaker's voice broke my thoughts, shrill and panicked. Emily, this is madness. You can't just change your mind at the last moment. She leaned into the sedan, her face flushed. The Millers are waiting. Jason's a fine man. You'll have a good life with him. Her words echoed the village's expectations, the weight of tradition pressing me to comply. My stomach twisted. In my past life, I'd have bowed my head, desperate to please. But the memory of Jason's cold dismissal, your sacrifices were your choice, burned away my fear. No, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I paid for this wedding. Every banner, every coin. I'm not marrying a man who doesn't want me. The carriers slowed, their faces uncertain. I leaned forward, my gaze fierce. Take me to the Carter family, I repeated. Double your pay if you do, nothing if you don't. The Millers can't force me, and they can't pay you. My words carried the weight of truth. The Millers were poor, their promises empty without my money. The matchmaker sputtered, but the carriers exchanged glances and nodded, turning the sedan fully toward the east. The crowd's whispers grew louder, but I forced myself to focus on Ryan Carter. He'd been my only ally in my past life. A college graduate who'd stayed in the village despite job offers, hoping to free me from the Miller's cruelty. His kindness had stirred my heart, but I'd rejected him, fearing my curse would ruin him. Now I had a chance to choose differently. The sedan moved faster, the village blurring past. My mind raced with what lay ahead. Ryan had loved me quietly, enduring slander when the Millers spread lies about him seducing a cursed widow. He'd left the village battered, his dreams shattered. Yet he'd never married. Waiting for me. Could I trust his love now? My fingers tightened around the veil. The warmth from my rebirth pulsed faintly, like a guiding star. If my parents' spirits had given me this chance, they'd want me to find happiness, not repeat my suffering. But the village's judgment loomed. By defying tradition, I'd become an outcast, my name synonymous with scandal. Was I strong enough to bear it? The sedan slowed as we neared the Carter home, a modest house on the village's edge. The music had stopped entirely, the silence heavy with anticipation. I smoothed my dress, my hands shaking. This was the moment I'd rewrite my fate or fall to ruin. Ignoring the matchmaker's protests, I stepped out and faced the crowd. Their eyes bore into me, some curious, others hostile. "She's throwing away a good match," a woman muttered. "Her parents would be ashamed," said another. The words stung, but I straightened, drawing strength from the memory of my past life's pain. I died for the Millers' greed. I wouldn't live for their lies. I turned toward the Carter house, where Ryan stood in the doorway, a bottle in hand, his eyes bleary from drink. My heart skipped. He looked broken, as he had in my past life when the village turned on him. But I saw the man who'd believed in me and told me my fate was my own. "Ryan Carter," I called, my voice cutting through the silence. "I choose you." The crowd gasped, and the matchmaker grabbed my arm. "Emily, stop this nonsense," she hissed. I shook her off, my gaze locked on Ryan. This was my rebellion, my defiance of a village that had branded me cursed. But as I waited for his response, fear flickered. What if I'd misjudged him? What if my rebirth led only to new pain? I pushed the doubt down, clinging to the hope that I could build a life worth living this time. The Carter family's modest yard was silent, save for the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the village. I, Emily Carter, stood before their weathered wooden gate, my red bridal dress stark against the dusty ground. The sedan carriers lingered behind me, their faces confusing and curious, while the matchmaker's protests faded into a low grumble. My heart thundered as I faced Ryan Carter, slumped in the doorway, a half-empty bottle dangling from his hand. His eyes, clouded with drink, widened at my approach. "Ryan Carter!" I called, my voice steady despite the storm within. "Do you dare marry me?" The words hung in the air, bold and reckless, challenging fate. The crowd gasped, their whispers slicing through the tension. "She's gone mad," someone muttered. "Are you throwing away Jason Miller for this drunk?" My hands trembled, clutching the crumpled veil. In my past life, Ryan had been my only refuge, the village's sole college graduate who'd stayed despite lucrative city offers, all to protect me from the Millers' cruelty. He'd endured their slander, their lies that he'd seduced a cursed widow, until the village drove him out, bruised and broken. Yet he'd never married, waiting for me. Seeing him drowning his sorrows, I feared I'd come too late. What if my rebirth, granted by that mysterious warmth, perhaps my parents' spirits, was a cruel jest, leading me to another rejection? Ryan choked on his drink, coughing violently, his bottle clattering to the ground. "Emily?" he rasped, disbelief etching his features. Before he could say more, a commotion erupted behind me. The Millers, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, with Jason's sister Amy in tow, stormed into the yard, their faces livid. Mrs. Miller's voice cut like a whip. "Emily Carter, are you out of your mind? You're meant to marry Jason today, and now you're here, shaming us all." Her words echoed my past life when I'd cowered under her blows after Jason's death. My stomach knotted. Could I face them again, knowing their greed had destroyed me? Amy stepped forward, her eyes flashing. "You begged to marry my brother, and now you pull this stunt? If you're not ashamed, I am." The crowd murmured agreement, their judgment a heavyweight. I faltered, the memory of my parents' dying wish to marry Jason stinging my conscience. Had I betrayed them by choosing Ryan? The warmth from my rebirth pulsed faintly, like a whisper of encouragement. My parents would want my happiness, not this farce of a marriage. I straightened, meeting Amy's glare. "Jason never loved me," I said coolly. "You know it, and so do I." Mrs. Miller's face purpled. "How dare you speak of my son that way? He's waiting for you, ready to build a life." Her lie was brazen, but I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. In my past life, I'd believed their devotion to Jason, only to learn they'd orchestrated his fake death to seize my dowry. My voice rose, sharp and clear. "A life built on lies? I paid for this wedding, every coin, every banner. I won't marry a man who sees me as a means to an end." The crowd shifted, some nodding, others scoffing, but I kept my gaze on Ryan, willing him to speak. He staggered forward, his voice hoarse but firm. "I've loved Emily for years." The admission silenced the crowd, and my breath caught. He turned to me, his eyes clearing. "I stayed in this village and turned down jobs in the city because I couldn't leave you to the Millers' cruelty. They slandered me and said I was chasing a cursed widow, but I didn't care. I waited, hoping you'd see you deserved better." His words pierced me, stirring memories of his quiet kindness in my past life. How he'd brought me food when I starved in the miller's woodshed and urged me to break free. I'd pushed him away, fearing my curse would ruin him. Now his love felt like a lifeline, but fear lingered. Could I trust it, or would I drag him into my pain? Mr. Miller stepped in, his tone softer, manipulative. "Emily, we're poor, but Jason's got talent. Support him, and he'll give you a good life." His words were a trap meant to guilt me into compliance. I laughed coldly. "Support him? So he can run to Lisa Tran with my money?" "I know the truth, Mr. Miller. You pushed this marriage for my dowry, not for love." The crowd gasped, and Amy's face paled. I'd struck a nerve, but Mrs. Miller lunged forward, her hand raised. "You ungrateful wretch!" she shrieked. Ryan moved swiftly, stepping between us, his stance protective. "Enough," he said, his voice low but commanding. "Emily's made her choice. Let her go." His defiance sparked something in me. Hope, fragile but real. The crowd's murmurs grew, some siding with me, others clinging to tradition. "She's disrespecting her parents' wish," a man said. The words stung, and doubt crept back. Was I dishonoring my parents' memory? But the warmth from my rebirth pulsed stronger, a reminder that they'd want my freedom. I looked at Ryan, his steady gaze anchoring me. "I choose you," I repeated, softer now, but no less confident. The Millers stood frozen, their fury palpable. Amy spat. "You'll regret this, Emily. No one will want a fickle woman like you." But Ryan's hand brushed mine, a silent vow. My heart raced, torn between fear and resolve. The village might scorn me, the Millers might retaliate. But for the first time, I felt alive, standing on the edge of a new path. As the crowd watched, I knew this moment would define me. Cursed widow or defiant bride. I chose the latter, praying my rebirth's promise would hold. The Carter family's yard was a battleground of glares and whispers, the air thick with tension. I, Emily Carter, stood defiant in my red bridal dress, its silken folds catching the midday sun. Ryan Carter's hand brushed mine, his quiet strength a shield against the Miller's fury. Mrs. Miller's face was a mask of rage, her finger jabbing the air as she shrieked, "Emily Carter, you've shamed us all! Jason's waiting, and you dare run to this drunkard?" Her words were venom, meant to drag me back to the prison of my past life, where I'd crumbled under their blows after Jason's death. My heart pounded, but I held my ground, the warmth of my rebirth. A faint pulse, perhaps my parents' spirits, urging me to fight. The crowd pressed closer, their murmurs a chorus of doubt. "She's betraying her parents' wish," a woman hissed. "Jason's a good match," muttered another. Their judgment stung, rekindling the fear that I was cursed, doomed to ruin all I touched. In my past life, I'd believed it, letting the Millers mold me into a servant to atone for Jason's death. But I knew now it was a lie. He'd faked it to run to Lisa Tran, using my dowry to fund his betrayal. Still, doubt gnawed at me. By choosing Ryan, was I dishonoring my parents, who died hoping I'd marry Jason? My fingers tightened around the veil, its weight a reminder of their love, and my pain. Ryan's voice cut through the haze, steady and clear. "Emily deserves to choose her happiness." He faced the Millers, his eyes blazing. "I stayed in this village and gave up city jobs because I saw what you did to her, how you used her, broke her. She's no curse, and I'll stand by her." His words stirred memories of my past life. Ryan slipping me bread when I starved in the Miller's woodshed, urging me to escape their grip. He'd been slandered for it, driven out by lies that he'd chased a cursed widow. His sacrifice, his unwavering love, anchored me now, but fear lingered. Could I trust this chance, or would I pull him into my darkness? Mrs. Miller scoffed, her voice dripping with scorn. "Happiness? With you? Emily's parents wanted her with Jason, not some fool who drinks his days away." Her jab hit hard, exploiting my guilt. My parents' dying wish had been my compass, guiding me to Jason despite his coldness. I'd thought it would give me a family, but it led only to suffering. My throat tightened, and momentarily I wavered, the crowd's disapproval pressing in. But the warmth from my rebirth flared, a whisper of my mother's voice. "Be happy, Emily." I blinked back tears, resolved to harden. They'd want my freedom, not chains. I stepped forward, my voice ringing out. If my parents could see me now, they'd want me to live, not suffer for a man who never cared. I turned to the Millers, my gaze unflinching. Jason doesn't love me. You pushed this marriage for my money, not my happiness. I won't be your pawn anymore. The crowd gasped, some nodding, others frowning. A man muttered, "She's got a point. Jason was never keen on her." Another whispered, "The Millers are greedy." Their shifting opinions gave me courage, but Amy Miller lunged forward, her eyes flashing. "You're a liar," Amy spat. "You chased Jason for years, and now you're too good for him? No one will want a fickle girl like you." Her words echoed my fears, that I'd be shunned, alone, my rebirth wasted. But Ryan stepped closer, his presence a quiet vow. "I want her," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. My heart swelled, but guilt tugged at me. Ryan had already suffered for me in my past life, beaten and exiled for his loyalty. Could I let him risk it again? The warmth pulsed, urging trust. I met his eyes, finding strength in their steady gaze. Mr. Miller tried a softer tack, his tone pleading. "Emily, we're poor, but Jason's talented. Give him a chance, and he'll make you proud." His hypocrisy was galling. They'd known Jason's plan to betray me. I laughed, sharp and cold. "A chance to use me? I know you lied about his feelings to take my dowry. Marriage is my choice now, and I choose Ryan." The crowd stirred, some clapping, others shaking their heads. A woman called, "She's brave standing up like that." The support, though small, was a spark in the darkness. Mrs. Miller's face twisted, but before she could retort, Ryan spoke again, his voice firm. "The Millers don't own her. Let her go, or you'll answer to the village for your greed." His defiance silenced them, and the yard was still for a moment. My chest ached with gratitude, but also fear. The Millers wouldn't yield easily, and the village's split opinions could turn against us. I'd defied tradition, risking everything for a man I barely knew in this life yet, whose love had sustained me in the last. As I stood beside Ryan, the warmth of my rebirth glowed, a sign I was on the right path. But the Millers' glares promised trouble, and I braced myself, knowing this fight was far from over. The Carter family's yard crackled with tension, the air heavy with the weight of defiance. I, Emily Carter, stood beside Ryan, my red bridal dress a bold declaration against the Millers' fury. Mrs. Miller's eyes blazed, her voice a venomous hiss. "You think you can humiliate us, Emily? You'll pay for this." Her words echoed my past life, when I'd collapsed under their accusations, branded a cursed widow after Jason's death. My heart raced the warmth of my rebirth, a faint pulse, perhaps my parents' spirits, urging me to stand firm. But doubt gnawed at me. By rejecting Jason, I'd ignited a fire that could consume Ryan and me. Could I protect him from the Millers' wrath? Or was I leading us both to ruin? The crowd's murmurs swirled, a mix of support and scorn. "She's got nerve," a man said. "Her parents would be ashamed," a woman countered. Their judgment stirred memories of my past life when I'd served the Millers to atone for a lie, my body breaking under their greed. I knew now that Jason had faked his death to flee with Lisa Tran, using my dowry to fund his betrayal. Yet the village's expectations pressed hard, and my parents' dying wish to marry Jason haunted me. Had I betrayed them? The warmth pulsed stronger, my mother's voice whispering, "Choose your path." I clung to it, but fear lingered. What if the Millers' next move trapped me again? Amy Miller stepped forward, her face twisted with rage. "You love Jason. If you saw him now, you'd beg to marry him." Her taunt was a calculated jab meant to guilt me into compliance. Before I could respond, Mr. Miller raised his voice, his tone deceptively calm. "Come to our house, Emily. Jason's waiting. If you're calling off the wedding, tell him face to face. Give him that respect." His words sounded reasonable, but I saw the glint in his eyes. A trap. In my past life, they'd lured me to their home, beaten me unconscious, and sealed my fate as their servant. My stomach churned. Were they planning the same now? Ryan gripped my arm, his voice low. "Don't go, Emily. They're lying." His concern anchored me, reminding me of his sacrifices. In my past life, he'd stayed in the village, rejecting city jobs, to shield me from the Miller's cruelty. They'd slandered him, claiming he'd seduced a cursed widow, driving him out with bruises and lies. Yet he'd waited for me, his love unwavering. Now, his fear for me was palpable and guilt stabbed me. I'd pulled him into this storm. Could I risk his safety for my fight? But backing down meant surrendering to the Millers, repeating the misery of my past life. I couldn't let that happen. I met Ryan's eyes, forcing a reassuring nod. "I have to go," I said softly. "If I don't face them now, they'll never stop." His jaw tightened, but he nodded, trusting me. Turning to the Millers, I spoke clearly, my voice cutting through the crowd's whispers. "Fine, I'll come to your house. But don't think you can force me back." Mrs. Miller's lips curled, a flicker of triumph in her gaze. Amy smirked, and Mr. Miller gestured toward the sedan. "Let's go then," he said. The crowd stirred, eager to follow, their curiosity outweighing their disapproval. I refused the sedan, walking beside Ryan, his presence a steady comfort. The village streets felt like a gauntlet, eyes peering from every corner. "She's walking to her doom," a woman whispered. "Brave but foolish," a man said. Their words tested my resolve, but I focused on the warmth within, the faint echo of my rebirth's promise. My parents would want me to fight, not cower. Still, my mind raced with what awaited at the Miller house. If Jason was there, would he feign love to trap me? Or was this a ploy to humiliate me further? My past life's pain, starving in their woodshed, dying of cancer, flashed before me, fueling my determination. The Miller house loomed ahead, its red wedding banners mocking the grief within. Wails echoed from inside, and Lisa Tran's voice rose above them, shrill with sorrow. "Jason's dead because you jilted him, Emily?" she cried as we approached. Her accusation was a knife, twisting my guilt. In my past life, I'd seen her with Jason, her hand on her pregnant belly, believing he'd choose her. Now, her tears seemed staged, part of the Miller's scheme. The crowd gathered closer, their murmurs growing. "She's cursed him," someone said. The word cursed hit hard, reviving my fear that I was doomed to destroy. But Ryan's hand squeezed mine, grounding me. Inside, the house was a shrine to deception, red lanterns clashing with the mourners' cries. The Millers stood guard near a curtained room, their faces mixed with grief and calculation. Lisa clutched Mrs. Miller's arm, her eyes red but sharp. "She said you owe Jason an explanation," her voice trembling with accusation. My chest tightened. Their plan was to paint me as the villain and chain me to their lies. Ryan leaned close, whispering, "Stay sharp. They're hiding something." His warning echoed my suspicions, but fear crept in. If I misstepped, I'd lose everything. The warmth of my rebirth flared, a reminder of my second chance. I squared my shoulders, ready to face whatever trap they'd set, knowing this moment could break me, or set me free. The Miller house was a theater of grief, its red wedding banners clashing with the wails echoing through the cramped rooms. I, Emily Carter, stood in the center, my bridal dress a defiant beacon amidst the mourners' dark glares. Ryan's hand steadied me, his presence a bulwark against the Miller's venom. Mrs. Miller blocked the curtained room where Jason's body lay, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Kneel and apologize to Jason," she demanded. "Your betrayal killed him." Her words were a trap designed to chain me to the cursed widow's fate of my past life. My heart pounded the warmth of my rebirth, a faint pulse, perhaps my parents' spirits, urging me to act. But guilt gnawed at me. Had I gone too far, risking Ryan and my freedom in this confrontation? The crowd pressed in, their whispers sharp. "She's cursed," a woman hissed. "Jason died because of her." Their judgment revived the fear that I was doomed to destroy, a fear I'd carried through my past life's servitude to the Millers. I'd given them my dowry, my health, my life, only to learn Jason had faked his death for Lisa Tran, leaving me to die in their grip. Now their scheme was clear, to guilt me into submission, to beat me as they had before. But the warmth pulsed stronger, a whisper of my father's resolve. "You are enough." I couldn't falter. not with Ryan at my side, his sacrifices haunting me. Lisa Tran stepped forward, her tear-streaked face a mask of accusation. "You jilted Jason, and now he's gone," she cried, clutching Amy's arm. Her voice trembled, but her eyes darted nervously. In my past life, I'd seen her with Jason, her love for him blinding her to his cowardice. Now her grief seemed rehearsed, part of the Miller's ploy. Mr. Miller nodded solemnly. "See him, Emily. Tell him why you betrayed him." Their insistence confirmed my suspicion. Jason wasn't dead. My past life's pain flashed. His cold sneer as he admitted his deception. The cancer that claimed me while they thrived. I wouldn't let them win again. Ryan leaned close, his voice low. "They're hiding something. Don't trust them." His warning echoed my thoughts. He'd risked everything for me in my past life, staying in the village despite job offers, only to be slandered and exiled for defending me. His loyalty now fueled my courage, but guilt tugged at me. I'd pulled him into this danger, and we'd both suffer if I misstepped. The crowd's murmurs grew. "She should kneel, she's heartless," testing my resolve. I glanced at Ryan, his steady gaze urging me on. The warmth flared, a sign I was on the right path. I had to expose their lie, for both our sakes. I stepped toward the curtained room, the Miller's eyes narrowing. "Let me see Jason," I said, my voice clear. Mrs. Miller hesitated, then smirked. "Go on, then. Face what you've done." Amy and Lisa flanked her, forming a wall, their confidence unsettling. My stomach twisted. What if I was wrong? What if Jason was dead this time, and I'd walked into their trap? But my past life's truth, his betrayal, their greed, burned bright. I pretended to kneel, my hands brushing the floor, then seized a nearby lantern, its flame flickering ominously. I hurled it at the shrouded figure behind the curtain with a swift motion. Screams erupted as flames caught the cloth, and the body sprang up, tearing at the burning fabric. "Emily, are you insane? You're trying to burn me alive!" Jason's voice, alive and frantic, shattered the mourners' wails. The crowd gasped. Some stumbling back, others frozen in shock. Jason stood, his clothes sang, his face mixed with fear and fury. The Millers' expressions collapsed. Mrs. Miller's mouth gaped, Amy's eyes widened, and Lisa's hands trembled. I straightened, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Now you see why I refused Jason Miller. He faked his death to frame me, to run to Lisa Tran with my money." The crowd erupted, voices rising in outrage. "Is he alive? What kind of man does this?" a man shouted. "The Millers lied to us all." Jason stammered, his face flushed. "You forced me to do this, Emily. If you hadn't backed out, I wouldn't have—" His words drowned in the crowd's anger. Mrs. Miller lunged forward, shrieking, "You vicious girl!" But Ryan stepped between us, his stance unyielding. "Enough," he said, his voice a command. "Your lies are done." The crowd surged, some pushing toward the Millers, their sympathy for me growing. I took Ryan's hand, my heart racing with triumph and unease. I'd exposed Jason and freed myself from their trap, but the lantern's flames haunted me. Had I risked lives to prove my point? I'd been meek in my past life, dying for their sins. Now I'd fought back, but at what cost? The warmth of my rebirth softened, a gentle reminder. I'd done what was needed. I turned to the crowd, my voice steady. "Jason cheated before our wedding and planned to ruin me. I choose my path now." Some nodded, others whispered, but their scorn had weakened. As we walked away, Ryan's hand warm in mine, the Millers' shouts faded. I'd shattered their deception, but guilt lingered. I'd protected myself and Ryan, yet the village's split opinions could still turn against us. The warmth pulsed, a sign my parents approved. But the fight wasn't over. Jason's glare burned into my back, promising revenge. I squeezed Ryan's hand, drawing strength from his love, ready to face whatever came next, determined to make my second chance count. The village air was soft with evening light as I, Emily Carter, stood in the doorway of my childhood home, now a haven for my new life. The red bridal dress was gone, replaced by a simple gown, its plain fabric a quiet rebellion against the chaos of my wedding day. Inside, Ryan Carter moved with gentle purpose, setting a table with steaming bowls and a plate of poached eggs, my favorite. His warm and unguarded smile eased the ache in my chest, but doubts lingered. I'd exposed Jason Miller's fake death and freed myself from his family's grip. But at what cost? The warmth of my rebirth, a faint pulse, perhaps my parents' spirits, had guided me here. Yet I wondered if I'd traded one cage for another, built of guilt and village scorn. Our small wedding was held in this house, and only a few neighbors were witnesses. The absence of my parents, who'd died when I was young, and Ryan's family, who had long moved away, made the ceremony intimate but bittersweet. Ryan had vowed to cherish me, his words echoing his past life's loyalty when he'd stayed in the village, rejecting city jobs to shield me from the Millers' cruelty. They'd slandered him, claiming he'd chased a cursed widow, driving him out with lies and fists. As he hummed softly, cleaning the kitchen, I saw the man who'd waited for me, his love a light in my darkness. But fear gnawed at me. Could I give him the life he deserved, or would my choices haunt us? "Emily, eat!" Ryan called, his voice pulling me from my thoughts. I joined him, the warmth of the eggs grounding me. "You've been quiet," he said, his eyes searching mine. "Are you regretting me already?" His teasing hid a flicker of worry, and my heart twisted. In my past life, I'd rejected him, fearing my curse would ruin him. Now, I'd chosen him, but the village's whispers followed. "She's impulsive. She'll bring him misery." I forced a smile. "Never. I'm just adjusting." He nodded, but his gaze lingered, seeing more than I wanted to share. Ryan set down his chopsticks, his voice soft. "I meant what I said at the Miller house. I stayed here for you and turned down jobs in Shanghai because I saw how they broke you. When they spread lies about me and said I was after a cursed widow, I didn't care. I only wanted you free." His words stirred memories of his kindness, slipping me food in the Miller's woodshed, urging me to escape. I'd pushed him away then, but now his devotion was a lifeline. Yet guilt surged. I'd pulled him into my rebellion, exposing him to the village's judgment. Had I been selfish, risking his future for my freedom? The warmth of my rebirth pulsed a reminder of my parents' wish for my happiness. They'd wanted me to marry Jason, believing he'd give me a family. But his betrayal had led to my death. Now, with Ryan, I had a chance at love. But the village's split opinions weighed heavy. Some praised my courage, calling me a woman who'd escaped a scoundrel. Others scorned me, saying I'd shamed tradition by jilting Jason. One neighbor had whispered, "She's too bold. Trouble follows her." The words echoed my fear that I was still cursed, destined to hurt those I loved. I pushed the thought away, focusing on Ryan's steady hands as he cleared the table. "I'm not like them," Ryan said, as if reading my mind. "I don't care what the village thinks. We'll build our life, Emily, together." His certainty warmed me, but the memory of the lantern I'd thrown at Jason haunted me. I'd exposed his deception, but the flames had nearly harmed him. I'd been meek in my past life, dying for the Miller's sins. Now I'd fought back, but had I crossed a line? The warmth softened, a gentle nudge. I'd done what was needed to break free. Still, I wondered if my actions would taint this new beginning, drawing the Miller's revenge or the village's wrath. I reached for Ryan's hand, my voice quiet. "You gave up so much for me. What if I'm not worth it?" His fingers tightened around mine, his eyes fierce. "You're worth everything. I've seen your strength, Emily, how you stood up to them and chose us. That's who I love." His words eased my guilt, but not entirely. The village's judgment could still turn, and the Miller's silence since the confrontation felt ominous. In my past life, they'd clung to me like leeches, draining my life. I'd humiliated them, and their next move could strike at Ryan, the one person I refused to lose. As night fell, we sat by the window, the village quiet beyond. Ryan spoke of his dreams, a job in the city, a home far from this place's pain. I nodded, but my mind wandered to my parents' spirits, their warmth guiding me to this moment. They'd want this love, this chance, but I couldn't shake the fear that my rebellion had set a storm in motion. The Millers wouldn't forgive, and the village's whispers could grow louder. I leaned against Ryan, drawing strength from his warmth, determined to protect our fragile happiness. My rebirth had given me this chance, and I'd fight for it, even if the shadows of my past loomed large. As dusk settled, the village buzzed with whispers, casting long shadows over my new life with Ryan Carter. I, Emily Carter, stood at our doorstep, watching the world shift after my rebellion. My exposure of Jason Miller's fake death had rippled through the village, turning the Millers from respected to reviled. Yet guilt gnawed at me as I gazed at the quiet streets. I'd freed myself from their lies, but the cost was a fractured community, with eyes now watching me warily. The warmth of my rebirth, a faint pulse, perhaps my parents' spirits, had guided me to defy Jason. But had I stirred a storm too great? My past life's pain, dying in their grip, clashed with my present fear. Was I becoming as ruthless as they'd been? The Millers' downfall was swift and merciless. Jason lost his factory job, the manager wary of a man who'd faked his death. Amy's engagement to a merchant's son dissolved, her suitor unwilling to tie his name to a disgraced family, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, already frail, withdrew into their home, their health crumbling under the village's scorn. Lisa Tran, Jason's lover, hid in shame. Her dreams of a life with him were shattered. I'd learned from a neighbor that Lisa had loved Jason fiercely, believing he'd leave me for her, but his cowardice, using my dowry while promising her a future, betrayed her. Her tearful eyes at the Miller house haunted me, a mirror of my past betrayal. Had I judged her too harshly, or was she as complicit as Jason? Ryan joined me, his arm brushing mine. "You're brooding again," he said, his voice gentle but probing. He'd stayed in the village in my past life, rejecting city jobs to protect me from the Millers' cruelty, only to be slandered and exiled for it. His steady presence grounded me, but I couldn't shake my unease. "The village is changing," I murmured. "Some call me brave, others reckless. What if I've made us targets?" He frowned, his hand finding mine. "We're together, Emily. That's what matters. Let the Millers face their mess." His faith in me was a balm, but the warmth of my rebirth flickered, urging caution. My parents would want this love, but not at the cost of new pain. The next day, Jason appeared at our gate, his face gaunt, his eyes burning with desperation. The sight jolted me, a ghost from my past life when I'd loved him, unaware of his deceit. "Emily," he said, his voice raw, "you've ruined us. My job's gone, Amy's engagement is off, and my parents are sick." "Why?" His accusation stung, reviving my guilt. In my past life, I died for his family's greed, my cancer fueled by their demands. Now I'd turned their world to ash, but the victory felt hollow. Had I gone too far, letting vengeance cloud my rebirth's purpose? The warmth pulsed softly, a reminder to stand firm. But my heart wavered. "You brought this on yourselves," I said, my voice steady despite my turmoil. "You faked your death, Jason, to run to Lisa with my money. You used me, and your family knew." His eyes widened, then narrowed. "So you destroy us? I'll forgive your fling with Ryan. Come back, explain it to the village, and maybe they'll stop hating me." His audacity stunned me. In my past life, he'd never admitted fault, blaming me for my suffering. Now, his plea was a desperate grasp for control. I laughed, cold and sharp. "Forgive me? I know your plan. To marry me, fake your death, and let me care for your parents while you lived with Lisa. You're no victim." Jason's face crumpled, but he pressed on. "I was wrong, okay? But Amy lost everything, and Lisa became a pariah. Have some mercy." His mention of Lisa stirred unease. She'd been complicit, yet her love for Jason had blinded me, much like my duty to my parents' wish. Was I punishing her for his sins? The warmth of my rebirth softened, urging balance. I met Jason's gaze. "Mercy? Where was yours when I died for your lies?" "You dug your grave, Jason. Live with it." My words were iron, but inside, I questioned. Was I avenging myself or becoming the Miller's mirror? He staggered back, defeated, and shuffled away. Ryan, watching from the doorway, joined me. He said you did what you had to, but his eyes searched mine, sensing my conflict. "Did I?" I whispered. "The village sees me as a hero, but some call me cruel. What if they're right?" Ryan's hand tightened on mine. "You're not them, Emily. You fought for your life, not to destroy theirs. Let the village talk. They'll see the truth." His words echoed his past life's faith when he'd urged me to break free despite the cost. I leaned into him, but the warmth flickered, a warning that my actions had consequences. As night fell, whispers reached us. The Millers were shunned, their home a shell. Lisa, mocked for her role, hid from the world, her hopes crushed. I saw my past self in her, betrayed, broken, but pushed the thought away. The village's judgment, once aimed at me, now crushed the Millers, but some eyes turned my way, wary of my power. My rebirth had given me strength, but also a burden. I'd protected Ryan and myself, but at what price? The warmth pulsed, a sign my parents approved my freedom. But I braced for the Millers' next move, knowing their desperation could spark a reckoning. The village lay quiet under a gray dawn, but a storm brewed in my heart. I, Emily Carter, stood at the edge of my new life with Ryan, my resolve hardened by the Millers' betrayal. Exposing Jason's fake death had freed me, but their lingering presence, desperate, vengeful, threatened my peace. In my past life, I'd died for their greed, my body broken by cancer while they thrived on my dowry. Now, fueled by the warmth of my rebirth, perhaps my parents' spirits guiding me, I chose to act. I'd dismantle their world, not just for justice, but to ensure they'd never harm me again. Yet guilt gnawed at me. Would my vengeance make me as cruel as they'd been? My first move was against Lisa Tran, Jason's lover, whose tearful accusations at the Miller house still echoed. I found her at the market, her face pale, eyes darting from the villagers' scorn. In my past life, I'd seen her with Jason, her love for him blinding her to his deceit. She'd believed he'd leave me, unaware he'd used my money to string her along. Now her shame was palpable, her dreams of a life with him crushed. I approached my voice soft but calculated. Lisa, I don't blame you. Jason's the liar, not you. Her eyes widened, wary but desperate for absolution. I leaned closer, my words a trap. He's abandoned you, hasn't he? Pregnant, alone, with the village laughing. Let him go. Save yourself. Lisa's hands trembled, clutching her shawl. I loved him, she whispered. But he promised, then left me to face this. Her vulnerability mirrored my past self, betrayed by duty to my parents' wish for Jason. Guilt flickered. Manipulating her felt wrong, but I pressed on, offering hidden savings. Take this for a doctor. End it quietly before it ruins you more. She hesitated, then nodded, tears falling. I'd insured her abortion, severing her tie to Jason. But as she walked away, my chest tightened. Was I punishing her for his sins or protecting my future? The warmth of my rebirth wavered, urging caution, but I pushed forward. Next, I targeted Amy Miller, Jason's sister, whose smug cruelty had cut deep into my past life. I found her at their crumbling home, her engagement canceled, her confidence frayed. With a mocking smile, I planted a seed. I heard your parents are desperate, Amy. They plan to marry you to an old merchant to pay Jason's debts. Her face paled, fear replacing defiance. In my past life, she'd mocked me as I slaved for them, knowing Jason's deceit. Now, I twisted the knife. You're their last asset. Unless you run. I left, knowing her impulsiveness. Days later, she fled with a drifter, stealing the family's savings and leaving them destitute. My plan worked, but a villager's whisper, Emily's cunning, sent a chill. Had I gone too far? The Millers' collapse accelerated. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, frantic over Jason's mounting debts, confronted Lisa's family, blaming them for their woes. A brawl erupted, and Jason was beaten bloody by Lisa's kin, his injuries superficial but dramatic. The Millers, unable to pay for treatment, came to me, kneeling in the dirt. Emily, please, Mrs. Miller sobbed. Save Jason. You loved him once. Their pleas echoed my past life's humiliations when I'd begged for their mercy. I stood cold, my voice like ice. You made your fate, beg elsewhere. They scrambled away, but a neighbor's frown lingered. She's heartless, he muttered. The village's admiration for my courage shifted, tinged with fear of my ruthlessness. Ryan sensed my turmoil as we sat that night, his hands gentle on mine. You're carrying too much, he said, his eyes searching. He'd stayed in the village in my past life, sacrificing city dreams to shield me from the Millers, only to be exiled for it. Now, his love steadied me, but I couldn't hide my conflict. I had to stop them, Ryan, but what if I'm becoming like them? He shook his head. You're protecting us, Emily. They chose their path. His faith was a lifeline, but the warmth of my rebirth flickered, a warning of consequences. My parents would want my freedom, but not a heart hardened by vengeance. The village's judgment grew sharper. Some still called me brave, a woman who'd escaped a scoundrel, but others whispered of my schemes. She's too clever, a woman said. Dangerous. The Millers were rats now, scorned and broken, but my role in their fall cast a shadow. Lisa, recovering in solitude, bore the weight of her choice, her face haunting me. Amy's fate with the drifter was unknown, but likely grim. I'd orchestrated their ruin, but the cost was my peace. The warmth pulsed softly, a reminder of my second chance, but I braced for the fallout. My actions had secured my life with Ryan, but the village's eyes and the Millers' desperation promised a reckoning I couldn't ignore. The village simmered under a heavy summer sky, its streets alive with whispers of my vengeance. I, Emily Carter, stood at the heart of a storm I'd unleashed, my new life with Ryan Carter shadowed by the Millers' ruin. I'd orchestrated their downfall, Lisa's abortion, Amy's elopement, the Millers' desperation, driven by the pain of my past life, where their greed had killed me. The warmth of my rebirth, perhaps my parents' spirits, had fueled my resolve. But guilt gnawed at me. I'd protected my future, but the village's wary glances and my unease whispered of a price. Had I become the monster I'd fought, my heart as cold as the Millers' lies? Jason's desperation peaked when he learned of Lisa Tran's upcoming wedding. I'd manipulated Lisa, convincing her to sever ties with Jason, framing him as a betrayer. In my past life, I'd seen her love for him, her belief he'd choose her over me, only to be used for my dowry. Now, broken by shame and the village's scorn, she'd agreed to marry another, hoping to reclaim her life. I'd handed her money for the abortion, but her haunted eyes lingered in my mind. Was she a victim like me, or a willing pawn in Jason's deceit? My actions had freed me, but her pain mirrored my past, stirring doubt about my ruthlessness. Knowing his pride would snap, I spread the word to Jason that Lisa was marrying. On her wedding day, the village square bloomed with festive banners, but chaos erupted as Jason stormed in, a loudspeaker in hand. "Lisa Tran is trash!" he screamed, his voice blaring. "She ruined me, and she'll curse anyone who weds her." The crowd gasped, Lisa's face paling as she stood in her bridal gown. In my past life, I'd been the shamed bride, beaten by the Millers' lies. Now, I watched from the shadows, my heart racing. I'd planned this, but the chaos felt heavier than expected. The warmth of my rebirth flickered, a warning I'd pushed too far. Lisa lunged for the loudspeaker, desperate to silence him. A sharp scream pierced the air as Jason slashed her face with a shard of glass, blood spilling through her fingers. The crowd froze, then surged, pulling them apart. Lisa clutched her cheek, a jagged wound blooming, her wedding ruined. Jason was dragged away, cursing, as Lisa was rushed to the hospital. The scar, palm-sized and centipede-like, would mark her forever, her marriage dissolving when her groom learned of her abortion. My stomach churned. I'd wanted Jason punished, but Lisa's suffering felt like my own past life's despair, a mirror of my betrayal. Jason was charged with assault and imprisoned, his family's ruin complete. Amy had vanished with a drifter, the Millers' savings gone, and Mr. and Mrs. Miller had collapsed from heart attacks, dying before reaching Jason's hospital bed. I'd provoked their frenzy, refusing their pleas for help, and their deaths sealed my victory. But the village's whispers grew darker. "Emily's a mastermind," a man said, his tone uneasy. "She planned it all," a woman whispered, fear in her eyes. My courage, once praised, now sparked suspicion. The warmth of my rebirth dimmed, urging reflection. Had I honored my parents' wish for my happiness, or lost myself to vengeance? Before leaving the village with Ryan, I visited Jason in prison. He was a shadow, thin and hollow, his eyes dull until they met mine. Emily, he muttered, help me. I'm innocent. Lisa deserved it. I smiled, cold and deliberate. Innocent? I made this happen, Jason. I convinced Lisa to abort your child, pushed Amy to run, and drove your parents to their graves. Every step I planned because you deserved it. His face twisted, and he coughed blood, collapsing as I'd once done, learning of his betrayal. The parallel chilled me. I'd mirrored my pain, but at what cost? The warmth pulsed softly, indicating that my parents approved of my freedom, not my cruelty. Ryan waited outside, his bike loaded with our belongings. He said you didn't have to tell him, his voice gentle but firm. He'd sacrificed city dreams to shield me in my past life, only to be exiled for it. Now his love steadied me, but I couldn't hide my turmoil. I needed him to know, but the village fears me now. I'm no better than the Millers. He shook his head. You fought for us, Emily. They chose their fate. His words soothed, but the village's judgment lingered. Some still called me brave, but others saw a schemer, their admiration laced with dread. As we prepared to leave, a neighbor's warning echoed. Be careful, Emily. You've made enemies. The Millers were gone, but their shadow, my actions, followed me. Lisa's scarred face, Amy's unknown fate, the Millers' deaths, they were my doing, and the village knew it. The warmth of my rebirth, my parents' gift, had given me a second chance, but I'd wielded it like a blade. I clung to Ryan's hand, vowing to rebuild with love, not hate, but the weight of my choices pressed hard. My victory was complete, but the final blow had scarred me too, a reminder that freedom came at a price. The village lay behind us, its dusty streets fading under a golden morning haze. I, Emily Carter, sat beside Ryan on his bike, our belongings strapped tightly as we prepared to leave this place of pain and triumph. The air was crisp, scented with jasmine, a faint echo of my doomed wedding day. Once heavy with a vengeance, my heart now stirred with cautious hope. I'd dismantled the Miller family, Jason imprisoned, Lisa scarred, Amy lost, and Mr. and Mrs. Miller dead, securing my freedom from their betrayal. Yet as the village's rooftops vanished, guilt clung to me. The warmth of my rebirth, perhaps my parents' spirits, had granted me this second chance. But had I honored it or tainted it with cruelty? Ryan's steady hand guided the bike, his quiet strength a balm. He'd stayed in the village in my past life, sacrificing city dreams to shield me from the Millers' cruelty, only to be exiled for it. Now his love was my anchor, and his new job in the city promised escape. I'd told him I was pregnant over breakfast as we shared pork buns, my favorite. His eyes had lit up, his laughter erasing the shadows of our past. A family, Emily, he'd said. Our family. The joy was absolute, but the village's whispers followed. She's a schemer, too ruthless. My victory over the Millers had earned admiration and fear, and I wondered if I'd lost part of myself to vengeance. We paused by a roadside stall, the vendor's smile hesitant. Heard you're leaving, he said, glancing at me. Good for you after everything. His words, kind but cautious, mirrored the village's split view. Some saw me as a hero, a woman who'd defied a scoundrel. Others, wary of my cunning, whispered of Lisa's scar and the Millers' deaths. In my past life, I'd died for their greed, my body broken by cancer while they thrived. I'd orchestrated their ruin, convincing Lisa to abort Jason's child, pushing Amy to flee, driving the Millers to collapse. But the cost was my peace. The warmth of my rebirth pulsed softly, a reminder of my parents' wish for my happiness and a nudge to reflect. I touched Ryan's arm, my voice low. Do you ever think I went too far? The village fears me now. He stopped the bike, turning to me, his eyes steady. You did what you had to, Emily. They betrayed you, used you. You fought for us. His faith echoed his past life's loyalty when he'd urged me to break free despite the cost. But I pressed on, my guilt spilling out. Lisa's scarred, Amy's gone, the Millers are dead. I planned it all, Ryan. What if I'm no better than them? He took my hands, his voice firm. You're not them. You fought to live, not to destroy. The village will talk, but we'll build a new life free of their shadows. His words eased my turmoil, but the consequences of my actions lingered. A neighbor had warned us as we packed. "You've made enemies, Emily. Be careful." The Millers were gone, but their downfall had marked me. Lisa, recovering in solitude, bore a scar I'd indirectly caused. Her love for Jason twisted into pain. I'd seen my past self in her, betrayed, shamed, but justified my actions as justice. Amy's fate with the Drifter was a grim echo of my past suffering, and the Millers' heart attacks, sparked by my refusal to help, weighed heavy. The village's fear was my doing, a shadow on my rebirth's promise. The warmth pulsed, a gentle reprimand. I'd secured my freedom, but at a moral cost. I leaned against Ryan, the bike's hum a steady rhythm. "I want to be better," I said. "For you, for our child." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You already are. You chose love over hate, Emily." "That's enough." His certainty steadied me, but I vowed to temper my resolve compassionately. My parents' spirits, guiding me through the warmth, had given me this chance not to destroy, but to rebuild. The village's judgment would fade, and I'd carry its lessons, not fear. My past life's pain, dying for the Millers' lies, had forged my strength, but this life would be defined by hope. As we rode on, the city's outline appeared, a canvas of possibility. I imagined our child, free from the village's shadows, raised with the love my parents had given me. The warmth of my rebirth glowed, a sign they approved, their wish for my happiness fulfilled in Ryan's arms. The Millers' ruin was a necessary end, but my choice was a new beginning. I'd faced my past, confronted my guilt, and chosen a path forward. The village's whispers, Lisa's pain, my doubts, they'd shaped me but wouldn't define me. With Ryan beside me, I smiled, ready for the good things waiting, my heart light with the promise of a life reborn.